Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 08 July 2016. The first article is related to India-Africa engagement by Gopalakrishna Gandhi. In this, he tries to analyze how the relations were, what are the issues for discussion when Prime Minister Nehru was there, and how this shift has occurred now. So in this context, recently India has witnessed racial attacks against the Africans. So many of the African envoys, they declined to participate in the Africa Day celebrations. Finally, Sushma Swaraj and the Minister of State, Mr. Singh, has to involve to diffuse the tensions. So in these circumstances, the racial attacks against the Africans, so they have shown India in a very poor light. Probably the Prime Minister Modi, in his 4-day visit to the Africa, 4-nation visit to Africa, that is Mozambique, Tanzania, and then Kenya, South Africa, he can face certain inconvenient questions about this. But is that going to occupy a primacy in our discussion? Probably no. The reason is, today India wants to project itself as a superpower. The issues of importance for India are trade, investments, strategic issues. So India is trying to compete for the resources in Africa with China. As China's economy is slowing down, obviously India wants to occupy that space to get the African minerals. That is how the relations are been changing. Africa and India, they are connected with common struggle and common ideology, especially with regard to issues concerned with humanity, such as disarmament, issues concerned with non-proliferation. India and Africa are very well connected. And also, Africa has a critical role with regard to the non-aligned movement of India. Now, the world theory is centered around an ideology of independence of the third world countries. It would have more spoken about this racism or the attacks against there might be a open condemnation by the Prime Minister on racial attacks against the Africans. But the situation is not that, and Prime Minister Modi is more pragmatic and he is more interested in the deals which bring value to India. And next is, coming to what we can learn from Africa. So if you see death penalty, in India still death penalty exists. And the UN Convention Against the Torture, India is a signatory but not ratified it. So in these circumstances, India can learn these things, or India can also prohibit the death penalty and ratify the UN Convention Against the Torture. So there are certain things for India to learn from the Africa. At the end of the day, India and Africa, their relations have to be based on strong foundations, that is principles, not just on the trade. So in this context, India shall not be equated with other countries as exploiter of the resources. So India has to become a partner in the Africa's development. So India also equally has to focus on development of Africa and skill inclusion to the people. So that shall be the focus of India. Now coming to ABC of radicalization. Now what makes the people radical? Is it poverty, or is it education, or what exactly is making the people radical? So in this context, it has been said that a kind of radical preaching or in madrasas is being squarely always reported to. But is that true? Now, a book was written by Alan Kruger, What Makes a Terrorist? Economics and the Roots of Terrorism. This is the name of the book. In this book, what he said is, a sense of grievance, or a grievance which is not redressed, associated with a grave sense of injustice, and a strong ideological polarization. These are the two factors that are making the youth as terrorists. And these are improved with wealth and education. So generally well-educated and rich people, especially upper middle class and rich, so they have a greater tendency to hold strong political views. When they are associated with a sense of injustice, either due to communal factors or one or the other, automatically it perpetuates this particular kind of terror acts. But governments, they are more and more looking at madrasas, poverty, etc. So they are not ready to acclaim that there is an injustice happening to minorities, and they are just ready to acclaim that these are happening due to radicalization by some imams, etc. And the third thing is the Chilcot Report. So you know that in Britain, Chilcot Report was released. Actually, the Chilcot Committee was appointed by Gordon Brown when he was the Prime Minister in 2009. It has given its report on Iraq war. So in this report, it has squarely blamed the Prime Minister Tony Blair and for his invasion of the Iraq along with the United States of America. So what it says is, there are no proper grounds that to believe that the Saddam Hussein was an imminent danger to the West. And there is no proper information to prove that the Saddam Hussein possessed the weapons of mass destruction, that is chemical and biological weapons. And second is, the UK, it did not explore all the other alternatives before choosing the war. And post-war preparation and post-war consequences, it was also not well prepared. And war planning is also inadequate. If you carefully observe, after the Second World War, Iraq is the first country on which UK has invaded. So in these circumstances, how the decision to go against war in Iraq has taken, it is mostly a prime ministerial decision. Even his cabinet colleagues were not taken into confidence, they were just informed. And Parliament was also informed at a later date. So there is no proper information, sharing or collective decision making. So now if you see the consequences of war, the state structure in the Iraq got the state is lost in Iraq. And many of the generals of Saddam Hussein, they joined with the terrorist elements. Now you can see there is ISIS, which is strongly present, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is strongly present. And now if you go to Syria, Arab Spring, an entire thing is spread from Iraq itself. So in this context, it can be clearly said that the growing instability and lack of statelessness can be attributed to the war which has been taken up by Mr. Bush and Tony Blair. So in this, finally, more than 1 million plus people have died. And so the humanity is facing the cost of this. From this, there are many learnings which we can make for the future. And we have to bring in necessary checks and balances against the people in power. Now coming to fixing the pulses deficit. Yesterday there was an article by Niti Aayog member. What the article says is, in India we are a cereal surplus country. Rice and wheat are surplus after the Green Revolution. But rice and wheat consumption is decreasing. On the other hand, per capita consumption of the pulses is increasing. But the pulses growth in the per capita availability of pulses is actually decreasing. So it means the people who want pulses are increasing, but however availability of pulses is decreasing. Now we are importing the pulses from more than 46 countries. In spite of this, they do not fill more than 25% of our needs. It is because many of the developing countries, African countries and the Myanmar, Southeast Asian countries where we import pulses from, they are also facing a huge shortage, and also consumption of the pulses has increased in these places too. It means self-sufficiency in the pulses is very much important. The first thing which the government has to do is the minimum support price for the pulses have to be raised so that the people will be motivated to cultivate the pulses. After the minimum support price, we have to provide for food processing industry, which already we have allowed for 100% of FDI. And the research has to be promoted. And after this, the pulses production, especially pulses are being dryland agriculture, rain-fed areas. So in these circumstances, we shall be able to provide for necessary research support to this. So financial support, and if we are able to do all these things, India can become self-sustainable in the pulses. And now, coming to NSCN, let's see the Naga issue. You know that Naga National Council, Angami Fizo, it was the first party which has demanded for Naga sovereignty. And in 1980, the NNC has reached a Shillong accord with the Indian government. which has lost or which has shed the sovereignty demand. And Nagas, they are spread in not just in the Nagaland, they are also spread in Myanmar, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, all these states. So in this context, in the Nagaland, the Nagas are not a homogeneous tribe. There are many other tribes in that. And the Nagas also have many many of the factions. Now after NNC, the Isaac and Muvaya and Kaplong, Isaac good, bad, ugly. So Isaac, Muvaya and Kaplong. These three people, they formed as NSCN. And this NSCN was broken into many factions. One of the faction is Isaac Muvaya. Recently Isaac has passed away, Isaac's. So, in these circumstances, 2 years back, the government of India has signed a framework agreement with NSC and IM, because NSC and IM is the major faction among the Naga insurgent groups, and they agreed for shared sovereignty. So here, what is the shared sovereignty is not revealed. And the second thing is, in making of this, the people or the chief ministers of the other states, that is Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, and these people are not being consulted. The chief ministers are not consulted. Now, Mr. Muvaya, he has gone back. So what the government said is, the Nagas, they have shed their sovereignty demand. They want to find a solution within the framework of Indian constitution. But Mr. Muvaya has clarified that they did not shed their sovereignty demand. And culturally, ethnically, Nagas are different from the rest of the country, and they need to hold their sovereignty and their passport. That's what their demand is. It is their identity. Now, next is Germany enacts landmark sexual assault law. Now, if you see, so a consensual sex and rape. So, a woman, if she has given a consensus for sex, and if there is she has said no, but she did not physically, force herself against the assaultant. So, in these circumstances, courts generally ask the proof of she resisting that. So, in this case, in Germany, a law is passed, no means no act. It means, in spite of oral objection, and she did not even resist, she did not resist, that also comes under the definition of rape. So, the broadening of the definition of the rape. Now, the trade pact, India-Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka already have a free trade agreement with India. Sri Lanka has major trade deficit with India. So, in this context, Sri Lanka and India are about to sign ETCA. So, ETCA stands for Economic and Technology Cooperation Agreement. So, broad contours of this are not yet known. But however, these countries are moving towards ETCA. Let's understand it at a later time. So, these are the articles for today. Thank you.